Earlier in the show, we spoke about Alaska Congressman Don Young and his inflammatory use of a racial slur that we will only refer to as the W word. We now have breaking news. Congressman Young has issued an apology. Young says, quote, "I apologize for the insensitive term I used during an interview in Ketchikan, Alaska. There was no malice in my heart or intent to offend. It was a poor choice of words. That word and the negative attitudes that come with it should be left in the 20th century, and I'm sorry that this has shifted our focus away from comprehensive immigration reform." Earlier in the day, RNC Chairman Reince Priebus said that the remarks, quote, "emphatically do not represent the beliefs of the Republican Party and that everyone in this country deserves to be treated with dignity and respect." Hear, hear. So now let's take a look at Priebus's RNC, courtesy of McKay Coppin's latest BuzzFeed article. It details Reince and the party's failed attempts at minority outreach and some dismal statistics on how the party integrates people of color into its organization. Example, there's not a single non-white senior official among the top 20 in the RNC. Here to discuss the party's missteps with minorities, co-hosts of NBC's The Cycle, Crystal Ball, and Touré, the man with no last name.
You know, it would be a lot easier to discuss the RNC's positive steps with people of color because the missteps would take us the entire hour, wouldn't they?
They would.
I mean, they throw in a little racism, right? We also got a little homophobia from our fruit-loving doctor, Ben Carson, today, right? With his apples and his oranges and his pears. But he still doesn't understand the fundamental nature of marriage. It's not just the government relationship, which is important, not just the religious relationship, which is important, but the social relationship. So he wants to give us all this stuff about government, right? And we'll give you some laws, but I don't want you to be able to go to your friends and say, "I'm married, this is my husband." And that part of it is so important.
Right. So, Crystal, let me start with you.
You see what I go through every day, Jonathan.
I know. Oh, don't I know it. So in the BuzzFeed article, a former RNC staffer describes what the mood was like when they were told to participate in minority outreach events. He says they would pass around a Beanie Baby that they had dubbed the Pander Bear and make fun of the, quote, tokenism. How is it that some members of the GOP just keep missing the memo and sensitivity?
Well, they have spent so long lambasting the Democratic Party for playing what they call identity politics that they hate to do anything for themselves that will showcase any sort of diversity, even if it is just a sort of first baby step towards appealing to broader groups. I mean, they have kind of a tough situation in a way because, as you pointed out, they are so white, top to bottom, that when they do put out, you know, Marco Rubio or Susana Martinez, it does feel like tokenism because, frankly, in a way, it is. You kind of have to start from the ground up and start with policies that are going to appeal to people and attract them in, not just say, you know, we have these brown faces here and there.
Wait a minute, but that might explain why Ben Carson, you know, he says something that, you know, slams the president and suddenly, boom, there he is.
Oh,
he's suddenly, you know, the golden child.
Well, he's their new black friend.
Yes.
It makes them feel very comfortable.
Yes,
I'm not racist. I'm hanging out with Ben Carson.
Right, but Touré, I want to talk about some poll numbers. A new Pew Research poll says just 33% of Republicans agree that immigrants strengthen the country through their hard work and talents, while 55% say they are a burden on the country by taking jobs, housing, and health care. Help!
Well, they need help from actual facts, right? 75% of immigrants pay payroll taxes, right? But they are not. But if they are undocumented immigrants, then they will never be able to access the things that they're paying into: Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. So they are makers and not takers at all. These are the sort of people they should be welcoming in. And if it's a party for the rich, they should want these people who will do those jobs that they don't really want to do. But this is a party that has gotten high on the elixir of white racial anxiety since 1964. And that's been a huge thing to them. They are drunk on it, and they can't move forward without it because this is how they rally the wagons and bring those white working class voters who are not necessarily racist, but are activated by fear of blacks, Hispanics, sometimes gays, sometimes even women's rights. And then how do you get off of that and create a national coalition large enough to go along with your rich white folks?
Chris, let's go back to Dr. Carson. This week we saw him awkwardly use gays, NAMBLA, and bestiality in the same sentence. He tried to backtrack those comments this afternoon with NBC's Andrea Mitchell, but I think he only served in complicating matters. Take a listen to this.
That was taken completely out of context. What I was basically saying is that there is no group. I wasn't equating those things. I don't think they're equal. Just, if you asked me for apple and I gave you an orange, you would say, well, that's not an orange. And then I say, well, there's a banana. That's not an apple either.
Now, I'm still trying to decipher that. No matter how many times I listen to it, I don't get
Not
it.
an apple,
so,
it's an orange.
Crystal, can you decipher this, please?
I don't think I can decipher it. But one thing that I did find sort of remarkable is even this man who, even if he says he's not equating bestiality and gay people, he is putting them in the same sentence and on par with one another in some sense, to be certain. Even this man, when pushed, could not come up with a reason to deny gay couples the federal benefits that straight married couples receive. The best he could come back to was just, we cannot give them the term marriage, which we know is an incredibly important piece, right, having that term. But that sort of shows how untenable the debate is on their side. The only thing he could come back to was the religious rationale and the denying of the actual term marriage.
He wasn't taken out of context at all. And this argument that he's trying to make with bestiality and NAMBLA is a fairly old argument we've heard over and over. So don't act like, well, that's not what I meant to say. Many people on your side are saying that.
Yeah, making the slippery slope argument, which was basically what he was trying to make.
Well, Crystal Ball, man with no last name, Touré, thank you, thank you both very much. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Touré's newly released book, I Would Die for You, Why Prince Became an Icon. We'll be right back.